Would you please stand with me and turn in your Bibles to Exodus chapter 29? For those of you following along in one of the Pew Bibles, that's page 70. I'll be reading verses 35 through 46 from the ESV Bible for this morning's reading. Exodus 29:35. Thus you shall do to Aaron and to his sons, according to all that I have commanded you. Through 7 days you shall ordain them, and every day you shall offer a bull as a sin offering for atonement. Also, you shall purify the altar when you make atonement for it, and shall anoint it to consecrate it. 7 days you shall make atonement for the altar and consecrate it, and the altar shall be most holy. Whatever touches the altar shall become holy. Now this is what you shall offer on the altar: 2 lambs, a year old, day by day, regularly. 1 lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. And with the first lamb, a 10th measure of fine flour, mingled with 1/4 of a hin of beaten oil, and 1/4 of a hin of wine for a drink offering. The other lamb you shall offer at twilight, and shall offer it with a grain offering and its drink offering, as in the morning, for a pleasing aroma, a food offering to the Lord. It shall be a regular burnt offering throughout your generations, at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, for I will meet with you to speak with you there. There I will meet with the people of Israel, and it shall be sanctified by my glory. I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar. Aaron also and his sons I will consecrate to serve me as priests. I will dwell among the people of Israel, and will be their God. And they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word. You may be seated.
All right. If you keep your Bibles open to Exodus 29, I want to give just a summary of what you just heard. So, this is part of the process of the priests being ordained as priests. Now, what does that look like? How many days? 7 days. Where are the priests located during the entirety of those 7 days? They're located in the court of the tabernacle. They're located in God's house for 7 days. And they have all these sacrifices being offered every day, but in addition, for themselves and for the altar. But in addition to that, they're offering a lamb in the morning with bread offered and wine. And then in the evening, they offer lamb with bread and wine. And this food is for God, and it represents a meal with the priests, with the people. Right after he tells them to do this morning and night, he then goes on to say, I am your God, I am going to live with you, I'm going to dwell in your midst, I'm going to be accessible to you. So here's the big picture. For a period of 7 days, you and me as Israelites all camped out around the tabernacle, where we look and see the priests living in God's house and eating effectively with him morning and night for 7 days. It's like, not to de-sanctify this thing, but it's sort of like you're living in the neighborhood and the neighbor next door is having a grill out with their family over, and they've got like lights hung outside in the evening. There's like a slight breeze blowing. They might have music playing, and you look out your window and you say, that looks really pleasant. That looks really nice. The smell of the meat cooking is in the air, the bread baking, they're drinking wine. It's this like picturesque, idyllic moment of fellowship in their family. And this is what everyone witnesses for 7 days as the priests live with God. That's what's happening. And that is meant to serve as an illustration for Israel to say, this is what the entirety of your life is meant to look like, to one degree or another. Fellowship with me. Idyllic fellowship with me. That's what's taking place here. This is a picture of what Israel should all be after, which is Edenic fellowship with God. From morning till evening. 7 days, which is living in the seventh day that we'll talk about today. Okay? So that's the picture. I want you just to picture yourself as living in a neighborhood and you see this house that's always grilling, that's always having fellowship going on over there, and you're like, man, that is a covetous house to me. That looks like a nice place to hang out, an inviting place. And in fact, it is. That's what this is. This play taking place every day between priests and God for 7 days is meant to be an invitation. You have a ticket. You can go to that. It's not just your neighbors where you're not invited. You're invited. You walk over. Sometimes I do this with our neighbors. I say, man, that smells good. And my neighbor Joaquin always, you got to come taste this. Come over here. And he cooks this Hispanic food that's just off the charts. And he has me taste it. And he seasons it just so with peppers and all this stuff. He calls me Benja. Benja, come over here. Benja, come over here. You got to taste this. So that's what it's like. It's this invitation meal all the time. That's why it's being displayed before Israel as the priests are being ordained, because they're beckoning them all into this courtyard. That's what's happening. So I want to give a brief outline of this morning. So where we're meant to be. In our minds and our hearts, we're meant to be in that courtyard, fellowshipping with God in day 7. That's what's meant to happen. So we're going to talk about the significance of what I'm calling 7th Street. Okay, that's where God lives. You ask someone, hey, where are you from? Where do you live in the Quad Cities? I live on 7th Street. That's where God lives. He lives on day 7. He lives in day 7. He lives on 7th Street. The alternative to living on 7th Street, I'm just breaking down the map to 2 streets, making it really simple. 2 streets. You can live on 7th Street with God, or you can live on, what's the next one? Flesh Street, with a whole host of people in the Bible. All right? You got 2 options. You live on 7th Street with God or on Flesh Street. Okay? And here's what's crazy. You can live on 7th Street for 10 minutes a day and live on Flesh Street the rest of the day. You can live on 7th Street for 2 seconds during the day, and you can live on 7th Street the rest of the time. You can go from street to street throughout your day. This isn't once you're there, you're just there. You can oscillate from 7th Street to Flesh Street all the time. And your friends are like, hey, where are you going? Why does that look on your face? I'm living on Flesh Street now. That doesn't look good on you. I don't like you when you live on Flesh Street. Nobody likes you when you live on Flesh Street. You scare us. We love it when you live on 7th Street. It's good for us. So we can go back and forth. The pendulum can swing between these 2 streets. So I want you to think about this morning, are you typified by living on 7th Street or Flesh Street? Let's think about that. And then finally, we'll go to some application with Christ and us. So we want to start with where we're meant to be. Now, I don't want this first slide to throw you off, because it might be something a little bit complicated for you. You've heard me say it before. I need to remind you of it to make this sermon make sense. This is where the text is pointing. But it might be a little bit confusing. I hope it's not. I'm going to put this setup on the screen. And what this demonstrates, And this is something several commentators have noticed, that as God gives Moses the directions to build the tabernacle on the top of Mount Sinai for that 40 days. Remember, 40 days is always illustrative of God doing away with something and creating something, okay? And so 40 days, God is doing away with something, He's creating something. And what commentators have noticed is that there seems to be a correspondence in the way God tells him to build the tabernacle and the way He Himself built creation. Okay? There's correspondence between the two. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this because we want to get to day 7. But day 1, in the original creation, God made light. Similar to that is the Ark of the Covenant, the table, and the lampstand that are made of pure gold, which is material light. Day 2, God made the firmament. This corresponds to the tent coverings and the curtains. They're the colors of the sky. They're up in the air over everything, so it matches. Day 3, the land and seas. He makes the bronze altar, which is land. It's like a mountain. And the courtyard. He establishes the courtyard. When we start a second sequence of this, which is coming soon, actually next week, Lord willing, you'll see that the seas is the laver in the courtyard. He'll describe that in the second sequence. Day 4, in original creation, God made the sun, moon, and stars. Day 4 in the tabernacle, He identifies the lampstand oil, which gives, what does oil do? It burns and it gives light, like the luminaries. Okay. Day 5, the birds and the fish. We talked about the priestly garments, that their garments will have wings on them. They'll have colors on them that are the same colors as the sky. They'll be like sky beings, like sky-flying beings. In Malachi, it'll say He longs to gather them under His wings. And then Jesus will repeat that and say, I've longed to gather you like a hen gathers his chicks, or her chicks. So this is the idea that priests are like in between heaven and earth. They're this intermediary beings that bring heaven to earth. And then day 6 is the ordination of priests, which we spent time on last week. That's when He made land animals and humanity. And now we get to day 7 of the tabernacle. And this is clearly correlates with day 7 because He talks about 7 days a few times. Okay? And there's fellowship with God. Day 7 is you're to be at rest with God. You're to be doing what the priests are doing, hanging out at God's grill out and dining with Him. This is the idea. Now, day 7 and this 7-day period of priests is, like I said at the beginning, meant to be what life was supposed to be like. At the very beginning, where did Adam and Eve live? What did they experience when God walked, right, in the garden? So what are they doing? They're living with God. They're like neighbors with God, okay? Now, you may not have known this, but you remember in 1 Kings, it's 6 and 7, when Solomon builds God's temple. Do you remember that? 1 Kings 6 and 7. Do you know what else he builds during that exact same time? He builds his house. Okay? In fact, it starts out with saying this is Solomon building God's house. And then he builds his house. And then he builds God's house. And it's all put together. Do you know why it was put together? Because they were actually right next to each other. Did you know that? This is a picture of God's house and Solomon's house. They're connected. Do you know why they're connected? Because this is the way it was always meant to be. God was always supposed to dwell with his people. This is a picture. We see the tabernacle in and among, right? In and among the tents. He's at the center and the tents surround him. But now we see the house connected. He's actually with God. They're actually part of the same complex. Okay? Now, what does this remind you of something Jesus said? Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. When Solomon builds the temple, it's surrounded with rooms. You have what looks like the tabernacle. It's double in size. You'll find that every time a new house of God gets built, it just starts getting expanding and expansive. And Ezekiel's temple is too big to build. It's like the size of the city. The New Jerusalem is like half the United States. Okay? So it's always getting bigger. It's always growing. It's like a tiny seed that starts with like Moses' tent, and it grows into the tabernacle, and then it grows into the temple, and then it grows into Ezekiel's temple, and then it grows into the New Jerusalem. And what the Bible talks about is what's the material of the temple now? It's you guys. You're walking bricks. You're walking bricks. You're walking stones. In other words, the temple is as big as there are Christians. Okay? So, this is the idea that God was always meant to dwell with humanity and eat with them. Now, this is a question only for the young people, and we're going to consider young people 12 and under, okay? So, you get this picture of God eating with the priests for 7 days, which is a picture of the original creation, the way it was meant to be. Now, young people, 12 and under, are you ready? Who did Adam and Eve eat with instead? What did the serpent give them? So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. So, God created his complex in Eden just to be like Solomon's and his house. They lived together, and just like the priests, they were to eat together. This is the idea. But when God established this complex in the beginning of creation, instead of eating with God, Adam and Eve ate with the serpent. And as a result of eating with the serpent, they directly noticed that they were naked, which means they lost something. They lost something. Now, I believe if you read the rest of the Bible in consideration of that, I think what they lost was light. Daniel read the passage this morning. Those who look to the Lord, their faces are. When Jesus was on the Mount of Transfiguration, what did he look like? You couldn't even barely look at him. He was so bright with light, right? Angels, glorious light. It scares people. It's so vibrant, right? So I believe Adam and Eve, they lost light. Now, what I would add to that is when you look at the priest's outfit, what did the priest wear? Because the priest is a depiction of what Adam and Eve looked like to some degree or another. That's what Ezekiel will say in chapter 28. So the priests had dazzling white on. They had beautiful blue, purple, and scarlet. They had gold. They had a white cap with gold on it. They were anointed with oil, which is liquid light. So they're like walking beams of light. They had rubies and all these dazzling stones on them. This is all a depiction of what Adam and Eve would have looked like. They would have, to look at them, would have been like, oh. And that's what the priests are meant to pick up, right? So when Adam and Eve ate, they noticed their nakedness, and instead, because they lost light, likely, so then what does God dress them in? After all this, they make loin coverings. It's laughable. What does God make for them? Skins of beasts, which is they listened and ate with a beast. They ate with an animal. Now they're dressed like animal. They had a huge reduction in their appearance. Okay? And this creates the association with animals that will turn into sacrifice. Okay? So this is the deal. They lived with God, but because they ate with someone else, they are kicked out of 7th Street. They're removed, not kicked out. They ask for an invitation to another dinner party. They chose that. And as a result of that choice, he removes them. This is what's happened. But what is very clear is that God has not perpetually kicked them out. And we know that because the very next narrative is with Cain and Abel, right? And they both bring offerings to the Lord. And does God eat with one of them? All right, back to the children again. 12 young people, 12 and under. Does God eat with one of the people of Cain and Abel? He eats with one of them. Who does he eat with? You guys are letting me down miserably today. Abel. He eats with Abel, but he has no regard for Cain. What did that look like? Did it look like Elijah when he makes his altar and he kills his animals and puts the meat up there, and the worshipers of Baal make theirs and they put their animals up there, and they call out to their gods all day long, but it never comes. But to Elijah's, fire comes down and picks it up. Is that what happened with Cain and Abel? Did fire come down and pick up Abel's offering, but just Cain's just sitting there? I think that might have been what it looked like. And Cain's face is downcast because God didn't eat with him, but he ate with Abel. So it's still lingering. You can still eat with God. This is the idea, and this is what the passage is about. So let's talk about 7th Street in a little bit more detail. So Isaiah asked me in the bathroom this morning where my favorite place to visit on Nova Scotia. I'm getting the cat out of the bag here. On the sabbatical, and I said, Isaiah, you listen, you'll hear in the sermon. So our favorite place was Nova Scotia. It was last time, and it was this current sabbatical. Now, we started a little tradition last sabbatical that when we go to Nova Scotia, we watch with the family Anne of Green Gables, both movies. I think there's more than two, but we watched the two. And it actually took place, the story takes place in Nova Scotia. Last time we actually visited Prince Edward Island, for those of you who really are familiar with Anne of Green Gables, where the story takes place and where the movies were shot. And it's a wonderful movie. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it with your family. It's really sublime. But in the story, Anne of Green Gables has this remarkable relationship with another young man in her class named Gilbert Blythe. Okay? And Gilbert is this kind of facetious young guy he starts off as, but he grows into this very admirable young man. But what's most remarkable about Gilbert is his love for Anne. He loves Anne for who Anne is. And it's like he knows who she is, even when she doesn't know who she is. And he just sees her with this wonderful love. But Anne is a very idealistic young woman. And she's got dreams. She's got aspirations. She wants to become a teacher she wants to go to a really good school. She's really smart. And she wants to become a teacher in a really nice area, really well-educated area, because she's such a proficient academician. And so she wants this. And she's a writer, but she has this certain ideal of what kind of book she wants to write. And then beyond that, Gilbert is really clear that he likes her a lot. But she expresses to him that she's got something that she envisions, this guy that she'd like to marry, and it's not Gilbert. Gilbert is just a good chum, is what she says about Gilbert. And Gilbert takes the hit, and he goes off to medical school, and she goes off to college, and she gets this job at Kingsport Ladies College, a very affluent place with distinguished people in it. And while she's there, Gilbert goes off to medical school. He intends to go back to Avonlea, which is their small hometown, and be a doctor because he loves it there. But Anne is chasing her dreams. She's chasing her aspirations. Well, while she's at Kingsport Ladies College, she meets a widower named Morgan Harris, Captain Morgan Harris. And when you meet him, you find that he's the exact description of who she wanted to marry. He's distinguished. He's a widower. He's a handsome guy. He's smart. He's wealthy. He's dignified. He's everything Anne wanted. He's older than her. He just has this sort of, really, man, this guy's incredible. And he actually is. He's a kind man. He's a good man. So you wouldn't be mad at Anne for marrying him. It's like what she wanted, and it's who she always dreamed about. And here's what's interesting. And I'm not going to give it away because I want you to watch the movies, okay? I'm not going to tell you who she picks, whether she picks Captain Morgan Harris or whether she picks Gilbert Blythe. But here's what Becky noticed last night as the movie finished that I thought was quite remarkable. That all throughout the films, there is this theme that plays. And it's a really pretty, catchy theme. The movie opens with it and that sort of thing. And throughout different scenes in the movie, that theme emerges, and it's a piano piece. I actually, the kids were making fun of me. I had downloaded it before, and I'm like, I downloaded it. Dad, you downloaded that? It's such a pretty song. And so this song plays, but here's what Becky noticed. She's like, did you ever notice that when Anne is at Kingsport, beautiful music plays, but the theme never plays? And when there's moments between her and Captain Harris that are like really lovely moments, that the relationship might be getting off the ground, pretty music plays, but not the theme song. But as soon as Anne goes back to Avonlea, as soon as she goes back to Green Gables, the theme song emerges. When she's with Gilbert, the theme song emerges. And it's the narrator's touch in the films to pull on your heart, to say, this is where she was always meant to be. He is who she was always meant to be with. This is the place she was never meant to leave. These are the books that she's supposed to write. Because Gilbert said, Anne, stop writing all this stuff that isn't you. Write about Green Gables. These are the books she's meant to write about this place. And so this song is constantly calling you back to Green Gables while Anne is chasing her aspirations. And that is a very helpful picture of what the number 7 is throughout the Bible. Every time you see the number 7, you're meant to think back to day 7 when God rested and invited men and women to rest with Him, to come to His grill out, to live in His fellowship, to live in that idyllic moment. But the Bible shows you the picture of Flesh Street across the neighborhood too. You can live on 7th Street with God, or you can live on Flesh Street. Just like Anne could go to Kingsport Ladies College and chase what she thinks she wants, all the while Green Gables is waiting. That's just a picture of us. But when you see the number 7, it's always calling you back. So let me just verbal vomit on you some 7 stuff, okay? This will go quick. You won't catch all of it, and that's okay. Don't try to take notes. If you really want them, I can email them to you, okay? So just absorb. Just absorb. Let's go back to the beginning of creation. You watch a movie and you hear a cannon burst, right? Or maybe it's in the movie theater, and you hear this just eruption. Boom! That's what 7 is like in the creation narrative. It's like God pulls a string, the cannon just explodes. It erupts with a cannonball of 7 shooting across the air, okay? So how does that happen? Well, it happens in the creation narrative. The first sentence in Genesis, first sentence of the Bible, consists of 7 words. The second sentence consists of 14 words, 7 times 2. Genesis 1 through 3, which is a unit, consists of 35 words in Hebrew. And guys, they counted words. They counted words. This is a big deal. They would count words and mark them. They'd count letters and make sure they got to the middle letter in the manuscript. Otherwise, they threw it away. These were very intentional writers, okay? 35 words in Genesis 2, 1 to 3. 3 prominent words in Genesis 1, God, heaven, and earth. Each occurs significant times in the narrative. God occurs 35 times, 7 times 5. Earth occurs 21 times, 7 times 3. Heaven occurs 21 times, 7 times 3. And God made, and it was so, and God saw that it was good. Each occur 7 times. There was an ancient literary device which gave 6 plus 1, and it drew attention to the plus 1. The 7th item is the most significant in utilizing this ancient literary device. Day 7 is the only day of all the days that God blesses. God shows you what blessing does earlier in the narrative when he blesses birds and fish and humanity. And what happens is when you bless fish, they fill the sea. When you bless humanity, they fill the earth. So blessing is an explosion of goodness. And he blessed day 7, and he didn't bless the others. Day 7 is the only day that he calls holy, which literally means it's set apart. Throughout the narrative, I mentioned this last week, day 1 is completed. Day 1's light is completed by the luminaries of day 4. Day 2's sky and fish is completed by the birds and fish of day 5. Day 3's land is completed by the land animals and humans of day 6. So there's this incomplete, complete. Day 7 rests under all of it, which completes creation. Day 7 completes the entirety of creation in the narrative. Mentioned this several times before. There was evening and there was morning in every day except day 7. So day 7 never ended. It doesn't have a closing formula, which means that day 7 lives on. So let's get out of the creation narrative for a moment and get to the flood. The flood, which is God recreating the world, he's putting it back into the condition it was with water over the deep, and then he's going to make a new one, as it were. The flood starts with 2 periods of 7 and ends with 2 periods of 7. God builds the tabernacle, mirroring the 7 days of creation, but he has the menorah, and the menorah has how many lights on it? 7 lights, okay? Going back to the creation narrative for a moment, the first day of creation has to do with light. The middle day of the 7 days is which day? 7 days, what's the middle? The middle day, day 4, right? Day 4 has the luminaries, all right, which also marks the calendar. Day 1 has light, which gives you evening and morning. Day 4 gives you luminaries, which mark the festivals, the time to worship. And then day 7 has to do with the Sabbath. So the opening day of creation, the middle day of creation, and the last day of creation all have to do with that thing hanging on your fridge called a calendar. Whether it's with days or with festivals or a week. The first, middle, and last all are marked for your calendar, and they all have to do with 7. Either the first of 7, the last of 7, or the middle of 7. Okay? This leads to the feasts, which are also just saturated with the number 7. You have 7 feasts, for crying out loud. Okay? 7 times of worship, 7 festivals. The first is the Sabbath, which is the 7th day of the week. This is actually the law that God says you are to keep above all. Above all. You're to be marked by a people of ceasing, a people of rest. And this introduces the idea of flesh. Because when you rest, you cease. You stop. You stop trying to work hard to get what you need. You stop trying to manipulate situations. You stop worrying. It's what God or Moses will tell Israel to stop, stand still when the Egyptians are coming to get them by the Red Sea. This is to cease. It's to say, I give up. I throw down my efforts before you, God. It's to stop. But you also can keep working if you really want. And you can live on Flesh Street. So, Sabbath was a day during every week to stop. Then you go to the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Feast of Unleavened Bread took place the first month of the year. It happened on the 14th day, 7 times 2, of the first month of the year, and it was a feast held for 7 days. The next feast was the Feast of First Fruits, which happened directly after Passover, the following day after Passover. You had 7 days of Passover. The 8th day was the Feast of First Fruits. So all these feasts are connected to the number 7. Very important. So the day of First Fruits, you wave your thing, your sheaf before the Lord. That starts a 7 times 7 until the next feast. And the next feast is the Feast of Trumpets. Then this is taking place on the 7th month, okay? Then it goes to the Day of Atonement. And at the let me tell you this. At the Feast of Trumpets, it's the first day of the 7th month. You offer a sacrifice and you don't work because the 7th month is like the grand finale of months, the 7th month. 3 things happen in the 7th month. You've got the Feast of Trumpets, first day. Then you've got the Day of Atonement, also in the 7th month. Then you've got the Feast of Booths in the 7th month. So 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. It's all 7. Then you've got a sabbatical year. Every 7th year, you let the ground lie fallow, and you let the slaves go free. And then you've got the year of Jubilee, which is the 50th year, 7 times 7 plus 1. What does this say? What this says is in creation, the cannon gets shot, and the cannonball comes out. And what you expect, as with all cannons, is at one point for the cannonball to what? Land. You expect it to land. And guess what? It never lands. It just keeps flying over and over and over and over. 7 goes all throughout Israel's history. You get to John's gospel, and John will give you how many signs to show you who Jesus is? He's very clear. 7 signs. Why? Because if the cannonball rests anywhere, where does it rest? Or is picked up? It's on Jesus. 7 is always, always available. It's always moving. It's like Anne's song that's constantly beckoning Anne back to Green Gables. You're always, always meant to live on 7th Street. You're never meant to go apart from that. But the fact of the matter is that people do. All too frequently throughout the Bible. You go back to Abraham. Oh, geez. Guys, why didn't you tell me? Okay. All right, so you go back to Abraham. A famine comes in the land. Abraham's hungry. And so where does he go? Don't say he went to Egypt. Where did he go? He went to Flesh Street is where Abraham went. Okay? That's where Abraham went. He went to Egypt because Egypt lived by water and they always had crops. So Abraham says, look, I'm not going to just die here in the promised land. God just brought him to the promised land. Did God not know that there was going to be a famine the moment he got there? Right? Isaac will experience a famine and God will say, don't go to Egypt. Okay? So Abraham just gets there. Famine comes. He goes to Egypt. He lives on Flesh Street. Okay? And while he's in Egypt, Pharaoh takes Sarah, and it says that for her sake, he dealt well with Abraham, and he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. So, of people, we won't go into the animals, of people, what did Abram get? He got, what does it say? Male servants and female servants. How did he get them? By going to Flesh Street. By acting according to his flesh, taking care of himself, fighting for himself, he goes to Flesh Street and he acquires all this stuff. Now, God told Abram that he and Sarah were going to have a kid. That kid doesn't come for a long time. So Sarah has an idea on Flesh Street that Abram take Hagar. Now, where was Hagar from? Now, Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. What kind of servant was she? Where did he probably get Hagar? When he was on Flesh Street. See, here's the deal. I want you to hear this. when you go to Flesh Street, it's really hard to get out of Flesh Street. Because you take stuff from Flesh Street with you. And it keeps on you. And you have to constantly fight Flesh Street because it goes with you. So, he gets Hagar from Egypt. And what does he do? Well, he follows Sarah's plan. And he takes Hagar, he sleeps with her, he has Ishmael. Now, you ready for this? Sarah mistreats Hagar. Abram mistreats Hagar. This should not have been done. The Bible does not condone this. God takes care of Hagar, because they sure weren't. But you know what is said about how Abram and Sarah treat Hagar? It's the very same words that's used for how Egypt will treat Israel. As if to say that because Abram, God's man, his priest, upon whom was great responsibility because he was given very, very much, because he mistreated Hagar, Abram's descendants will be what? Because he mistreated Hagar the Egyptian, Abram's descendants will be mistreated in the exact same way that he and Sarah mistreated Hagar by the Egyptians for 400 years. So lest you hear critics say about the Bible, all these guys did stuff and they got away with it. Some of that's true because we all get away with stuff because God gave us Jesus. So we're all guilty and forgiven. But don't think that God lets his children off the hook easy. His descendants will suffer for 400 years the way they treated Hagar the Egyptian. Okay? So, this is one act of the flesh. And look at the repercussions of what happened. One makes it easy for another, which makes it easy for another. And this is how the Flesh Street formula works. So, it's directly after that, this incident, what does God have Abram do? Turn the chapter, very next narrative, chapter 17 of Genesis, after he mistreats Hagar, you need to be circumcised. What's circumcising? Circumcising is cutting off flesh in your most intimate parts. That's what circumcision is. It's cutting off the flesh in the most intimate part. Because this is the deal. Abraham, don't live on Flesh Street. Cut the flesh off. The very same thing will be done with leaven. Every Passover, they were to remove the leaven of the house. It's said that Israelite families would take their children and they would walk like a children's game to every corner of the house and say, "Do you see leaven there? Do you see leaven there?" They were to get rid of it and start with new leaven. Why? It was an illustration to say that this year, because remember, Passover was the new year, it was the beginning of the year. This year, and it was when all the trees were blooming and flowers were growing, we're getting rid of our old sin from last year, and we're starting all over with new leaven. We want to get rid of that old stuff from last year. So this is what is constantly happening to the people, is to get rid of the flesh. That's what's going on. And live in a state of rest. This is what is supposed to happen. But what we find, unfortunately, is that Israel, in their history, had a history of not entering God's rest. They lived on their own. They fought for themselves. They trusted in chariots and horsemen and swords. They trusted in the produce instead of the God of the produce. Just quickly consider, this is them going into the promised land after Sinai. For 40 years I loathed that generation and said, they are people who go astray in their heart. They go to Flesh Street and they have not known my ways. Therefore I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Of the sabbatical year, he took into exile. This is every 7th year they were to let the ground lie fallow. He took in exile in Babylon those who had escaped from the sword, and they became servants to him and to his son until the establishment of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths. All the days that it lie desolate, it kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. So you take 70 times 7, 490 years. They did not keep the sabbatical year. Passover. Josiah commanded all the people, keep the Passover to the Lord your God, as is written in the book of the covenant. For no such Passover had been kept since the days of the judges who judged Israel, or during all the days of the kings of Israel or the kings of Judah. They never kept Passover. No kings kept Passover. The Feast of Booths. All the assembly of those who had returned from the captivity, this is post-exile, made booths and lived in the booths, for from the days of Joshua, the son of Nun, to that day the people of Israel had not done so. You're talking that they entered the promised land, and after Joshua died, they never ever kept this again. So they lived outside of day 7. But what was the priest doing for these 7 days? He was doing exactly what Jesus says in Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. That's them. He's in the courtyard. It's like he's knocking at the door, at the entrance of the courtyard, saying, listen, like, come in with me. Come in with me. But this is in the inverse. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me. This illustration of the priest for 7 days was a screaming out, I will fellowship with you. Don't live on your own strength. Don't make decisions on your own wisdom. Don't do that. Make your decisions with me. This is what he's calling to his people, to live on 7th Street. That's the idea. Your bulletin, he says to his people, I don't shame you for not having offerings before me. They're before me day and night. This is what I shame you for, is that you don't, you think I need food. And you're not realizing that me eating this aroma is about me longing to have you fellowship with me, because that's what you need. See, you think I need this cattle. You think I need these bulls and goats. I don't need them. I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I own the bird. If I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you. What I'm giving you is fellowship with me. This is what he's always been after. He says, this people draw near me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, while their hearts are far from me, and their fear of me is a commandment taught by men. And so what happens? Well, just like God didn't receive Cain's offering, so he'll stop receiving Israel's. How does he do that? Well, the temple gets destroyed. It's over. It's over. I'm not going to receive your offerings anymore, because you don't really have a relationship with me. And so let's bring this together with our street, Christ and us. I have 3 final questions for this morning. The first, where does your mind live? Does your mind live on Flesh Street? You see, Christ has offered us a meal, just like he offered the priest, did he not? In the form of communion. He gives us the meal to fellowship with him. He says on the cross, it's finished. There's nothing more you need to do to be right with me. He calls himself the door. I am the entrance into rest. So the first question is have you trusted in Christ to be right with God? Have you entered the courtyard? Have you entered through Christ's sacrifice, through the cross, into fellowship with God? Are you living on 7th Street? That's the first question. With that, I want to ask, where does your mind live on a regular basis? Does your mind live in your circumstances? Does your mind live in your victories or in your failures? Does your mind live in your anxieties or your past? Or does it continually think about your future? Or does your mind live with Christ? You see, it's fascinating. The gentleman from the Bible Project pointed out a very neat thought that, throughout creation, you have 6 days where things aren't as they should be. And then you have the 7th day when things are as they should be. And they make the point, I think it's really valid, is that that's our whole lives, right? That our whole lives, I remember, have you been hearing the cicadas? They're not as loud anymore, but when we got back, they were nice and loud. The boys called me over to the garage, and there was a cicada shell, right? Just sitting there, looked just like a cicada. And it was his exoskeleton, And you may have seen those around. That's essentially what the Christian life is like. That God is constantly making you and remaking you. Making you and remaking you. Making you and remaking you. And what does that remaking? Well, the 6 days, there aren't really any fun. Did those 6 days hurt creation? Kinda. They were just like this fat blob, right? That needed reshaped and formed and filled. It hurt. But it brought about perfection. And that's exactly what God's doing in your life now. So you can have rest in those 6 days because rest is on its way. So keep that in mind in regard to trials. Number 2, do our encounters with others reflect His encounter with us? Listen, every person with whom you have contact today and this week should be encountering a haven, a resting place, still water that's worthy to help them contemplate. Or do people encounter somebody on Flesh Street who, when they encounter you, what are you prone to do, or what am I prone to do? Make their lives upset with my troubles. Am I talking in a mirror here, or do you do that too? Do you put your stress on the people around you, your anxiety on the people around you, your concerns on the people around you, or are you a place of haven for that, a resting place for that? Because if you're living on 7th Street, you'll be able to do that. But if you're living on Flesh Street, you'll make everybody else leave with tumult and turbulence. Whether it's the political thing you're stressed out about, or the tax thing you're stressed out about, or the moral ethos of our society that you're stressed out about. And they come to you and say, man, I was happy when I came to you, but I'm really upset now. I'm going to have a hard time sleeping tonight. You see? That doesn't mean those problems don't exist. Just means, are you living on Flesh Street and how you handle it? Every person you should encounter someone living on 7th Street. And then last, is our house as hospitable as His? Is our house as hospitable as His? Friends, the illustration I gave you about my neighbor should be where Joaquin invites me over all the time and shows me things. He showed me one time he had a tree that was growing out of a pot. It was just about this tall. This is so funny. And he says, Benja, you got to see this tree. You got to see this tree. See this tree? He goes, I was walking through a market where they were selling all these fancy trees, and one of the seeds had fallen on the ground. That's that tree. That's that seed, he says. It's so funny. So we need to be neighbors that are unbelievably hospitable to our neighbors, interacting, engaging, always holding out a welcome, a welcome, a welcome. This is who God is. It's demonstrated with his priests dangling this environment before the people for 7 days. And this is who our Savior is. Musicians, would you come? Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Let's live there.